Let me share with you some reflections on one of the readings for the Sunday of the Lord's Passion, otherwise known as Palm Sunday. And the reflections are on the second chapter of the letter of Paul to the Philippians. And this is my translation. I'm not going to read the whole thing, and it's not exactly what you're going to see here in a minute. But what we're going to do is go through the English translation that I've put together and also throw in some Greek. Greek was the language that Paul was writing in. In fact, the entire New Testament is written in Greek. And what we're going to see here is a hymn, probably a hymn that Paul learned early on as a profession of faith in Jesus Christ, his Lord, who he had met on the Damascus Road when he was converted from being a persecutor of the Christians to a promoter of his own Christianity. So you can just read this for a second and look it over and get yourself familiar. This is the second reading for the Sunday of the Lord's Passion. And there is the second part. We'll treat this actually in two parts. And I'm not reading from a script here. I'm giving you this as a kind of reflection off the cuff with some understanding. So I started off by saying, be all thinking this, because there's a verb here. Just as Jesus Christ was thinking. He was in divine form, morphetheu, divine form, from the beginning. So the Nicene Creed says he's consubstantial with the Father. That is another Greek term turned into Latin and turned into English. He was in divine form from the beginning. He was always divine, second person of the Trinity, but he did not suppose equality with God could be just ripped off. Now, that's a colloquialism, but the English translations we usually see are just really kind of weak. Arpagmon is stronger than that. And so that's why I've said just ripped off. That is, Jesus did not want to just, go on. Yeah, I'm God. Let's just leave that alone. And it's almost like stealing it when you can do something different. He totally poured himself out. This is the kenosis hymn, many people call it. E kenosein. He poured himself out. He totally emptied himself. There was nothing obvious about his divinity when he was born as a little baby in Bethlehem. Taking the form, morphen, we get that metamorphosis from that word, of a slave, of a doulos. Now, many people translate doulos as servant, but most servants at the time of Jesus and Paul were slaves. They were owned, they were bought. Being born in human nature, anthropon, schemati, we get the word schematic from that. Human nature. And he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even death on a cross. So that humbled word is a little tough. Etapenosen. Epenosen. And became obedient. Obedient. Epecus. unto death. Even death on a cross, a stauros, a torture device. So this is how much he loved us. And notice go back to write those first words. Paul is saying that the people in Philippi ought to have this same mental process, that they should, high or low or whatever their form is on earth, they pour themselves out for others. They empty themselves, humble themselves, become obedient. Obedient to whom? Obedient to Jesus Christ and his law of love. Now continuing. So Jesus is as low as you can get. He has died the death of a slave. And then this little three-letter word, about the smallest in the whole passage, Dio. Therefore, so this is the break. This is where the descent becomes an ascent, an ascent. And God, Theos, has highly exalted him. So now we're going to get some really strong language about how the Father has raised him up. And that is hyper upsothen. You see that word hyper is hyper. We use the word hyper all the time. So just rocket boost up. And bestowed, that's charizato. Charizato, you're familiar with the word charism. So it was a free gift on him, the name, onoma, which is above, there's that hyper, again, every name. Pan is every, all. Now, what is the name above every name? And this is a beautiful way in which this hymn says, the name above every other name. Oh, and now we're going to massage that. Now we are going to really talk about the name above every name. So that the name, onomati, of Iesu, Jesus. So Jesus now is the name above every name. But what is it? Upon every knee should bend, kampse, in heaven. Heaven is epuramon. And on earth, so here we go, way up in heaven, and on earth, and that's epigeron, and under the earth, kataxthon ion. So the three categories in their cosmology was the heavens, the earth, and everything under the earth. So everything, pan, everything. And now we're going to get another pan, and every tongue, and we look at the word glossa, where we get the word glossary, and epiglottis, every tongue, confess. Now I'm going to try this one. Exomologesetai. Confess. That's what you would do when you were before the judge. You're going to confess, but in this case, you're going to confess. Here's the Greek, Kyrios Iosos Christos. Now, that was treason. But every tongue should commit this crime, because not Kyrios Caesar, Caesar is not Lord. No. This crucified God-man is Lord, is the greatest name. Kyrios is Greek, standing in for Yahweh. the name above all names is the name that God revealed to Moses on Sinai. And Jesus Christ has that same name, that same honor. Now the glory is to God the Father, Patros. This word doxon means glory, and we get the word doxology from that. And orthodox, right praise, because the doxa is reserved to God. That's the honor, the glory, the praise, the worship that is due to God alone. And Jesus Christ, who reigns in heaven and can display to us his wounds so that we can, for all eternity, know exactly who we have as Lord.